Welcome on into the show. My name is Deny Gallagher, and I'm joined by the snare campaign provocateur, the backbeat of the backseat. It's Benny Horowitz. What's up, dude?
I'm back. I'm home. I'm here doing tune-up podcasts. Man, every time I leave, I think like, oh, touring involves like, a certain degree of downtime in almost every day. And I go in with the intention like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. It's going to be easy to do this. I'll have plenty of time. Now I'm like 4 days in. And besides for playing drums, I'm mostly dead to the fucking world. It's so I always have grander ambitions than I can pull off once I get out there. Yeah.
It's so funny. Like the first tour since we started doing this, I was like, okay, like maybe, but then this time I did not even bother. I'm just like, I'll see you in 4 weeks.
I know. Well, one day we'll figure it out.
Well,
but
we have to get you warmed up to the Take game. Top 5 crowds that you played for on the tour.
God. Oh, terrifying. It's terrifying. Well, I mean, some of the places we haven't been in quite a long time. So it was like, we hadn't been to Texas in, a good 8 or 9 years. We hadn't been to Florida in even longer. So, hitting some of these towns was pretty exciting because it was just like, I mean, we played a show in San Antonio, and the last time we played in San Antonio was like,
Tony Parker era,
like a 75 cap like bar, somewhere in the wrong side of town, so yeah, it was like really getting getting the dust knocked off in some of these places. We haven't been to Southern Florida. We went to Fort Lauderdale. I don't think we've been to Miami since like 2009 or something like that. So it was kind of like reinvigorating, playing for people who haven't seen us in quite a long time,
100%. You played some really cool venues. I got to leave this off here. The Ryman Auditorium. What was that like to play compared to other places?
It was very different because the stage and the main performance area is an active part of the museum all day. So like your whole crew, we're all up on stage getting our stuff ready, and there's little steps going up for people to take a photo op with the stage, like while you're setting up the stage. So all day long, you're kind of sharing this space with museum goers. So that was pretty interesting. And then at 4 o'clock, it shuts down. But it was one of those places like, it had a crazy amount of history like all over it, and a lot of pride, I mean, even our bus driver, who was from Tupelo, Mississippi, he made sure the bus was like squeaky clean to even be in the Ryman parking lot, because he's like, it's the Grand Ole Opry, baby, like I got to step up. So that part of it was really cool. I mean, I'm not a huge country music fan, so like as far as the names and the faces, it probably didn't ring as much as it did with some others, but it's a tangible history there, and it was fun to photobomb a couple tourists early on in the day when I was setting up my drums.
And then you guys hit Atlantic City. What was that like? The Hard Rock? That venue seemed interesting. It seemed like kind of a converted convention hall.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I forget that the Hard Rock in AC used to be the Taj.
Oh, yeah.
So like it's got those weird archaic opulence, touches of the past in there. But AC for me, that's a family show.
Yeah.
So, we had a day off in AC, but my entire crew came after school to hang out. So it turned into, like that's where it's a good thing that one thing that connects a band always and should be part of their initial motives is like, shared goals and shared, like, you need to be looking in the same direction and wanting the same things to get there adequately. And I think one of the things that helped Gaslight at this point is the fact that we all have kids, and we're all kind of going through that thing. So the morning of a show when we're meeting at the hotel pool at 10 o'clock to let the kids go swimming and sitting on, the chair, like it's a different different way of doing things. By the time the show happens, you're like, because you get one day of family day and you're back. So I mean, that's one of the biggest things is like, when I'm in full on kid mode at home, I'm really winding down the clock at night at about 10 o'clock. And I usually don't get past like 11 o'clock. And, that's literally my set time on tour, I quickly adjust once I'm out on the road where, like the first day I can't sleep past like 8 o'clock. But a few days in, I'm like waking up from my second sleep. It's like 10, 11, and I'm like, okay, good. I feel nice and rested. The harder transition is coming back. And when you get used to, that second sleep, going to sleep at 2, 3 in the morning and waking up at, 10, 11, 12, and then you plop yourself back home and you get the 6:45 wake up, that's what's like jarring and what kind of makes you feel like a shell of a person and a little confused for the first few days, for sure.
How was the day-night doubleheader in Atlanta? That must have been a
went
nuts
okay.
night. Yeah,
went okay. I think we were definitely feeling it. That was a 12 midnight set time, like 12:15 or something. So after a festival set that day. So it was due to a fuck up, like basically it was one of those situations where we were supposed to play our after show or our, non-festival show Friday night and then play our festival set Saturday. I see an Instagram post from my own band that says this show is on Saturday. I hit up management. I'm like, why is that the same day? They're like, oops, I don't know. And it was a fuck up by the festival for putting us on. But they'd already announced the show. They already started selling tickets. So it's one of those unfortunate, things where if we were to cancel, even if we were like, oh, the festival messed up, we're still canceling a show on people who bought tickets already and stuff like that. So it was kind of like hey guys, can you do it? We're like, what do you mean we do it? You already fucking started it. Like, so yeah, we didn't have much of a choice, but it ended up, I was more nervous for it than it actually was, but it was a heck of a day. I mean, because, we played daytime at a festival. So this entire lighting package we have is useless, so the whole crew had to wake up super early, get to the venue, unload all the, the audio and lighting rigs at like 9 o'clock in the morning, then drive back to the festival with the gear, to get set up, play the show. And I think like 15 minutes after we were done playing, we were in a car trying to get back to the venue, getting that show set up. So it was a heck of a day. Probably harder for our crew even than it was for us. So
yeah.
So bless them. Had a little time off in San Antonio. Saw the Alamo for the first time because it was. What's that?
No, I was just asking if it's rememberable.
It is. I mean, for someone like me, it doesn't take long to find a place like that a little skeevy, because it's just like, historical murder porn kind of stuff going on. And, one of those great reminders that the winners write history, because the other side of that conflict is not very well talked about at that place. And it's got a real kind of like America's Jeff Foxworthy kind of vibe. So, the actual place is like, it's interesting, and it's cool to see. I'm glad I did. We asked one of the security guards if there was a basement, of course, and if Pee-wee's bike was in the bottom, because we had to. I didn't pee on it. But no, it was interesting. I took a nice walk there. I decided to not spend any money in the gift shop, though. What I enjoyed the most in San Antonio was the Riverwalk, which is this beautifully designed, like, just canal and river that cuts through. It feels very like European and cool. Well, it feels European plus like a bubblegum shrimp company. And, it's a little touristy too. But yeah, that was a really nice thing. In Memphis, I had a day off and I caught a Memphis Redbirds
Oh.
Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp Game. That's really the name of the team. But I got to see Jordan Walker, who was just sent down by the Cardinals a few days before. That was a fun day off. And one of the cooler day offs I had, I was surprised, was in Portland, Maine.
Oh, I love that town.
What a great town. What a great town. I'll tell you, the last time I was in Portland, Maine was in like 2006 when Gaslight Anthem decided to do a tour with our buddies, the Forever Endeavor. And we decided to do New England in January. In vans, we played at a pizza place in Portland, Maine called like Vito's Pizza or something. There was very few people there. And this was the night. This is always in my head what I remember Portland, Maine as, is the night I learned what runner's nipples are. Because that night at the show, it was so freezing in the venue that, nips got a little hard. But then I worked up a sweat playing and ouch. After like 3-4 songs, like I couldn't bear it. And I had to take my shirt off because my nipples hurt so bad. And it took like 3 or 4 days to recover. So it's one of those funny things about tour is like, if you wind up in a random city in a weird side of town and the weather's bad, in your head, you're like, oh, that fucking city sucks.
Yeah.
And forever in your head, you're like, that place sucks. And then you go back like 15 years later on a nice day in a different part of town. You're like, oh, what a great place. And I kind of had that feeling with Portland this time. Yeah, what a cool town. It took me everywhere, man. And even, ending the tour at a apple orchard outside of Syracuse, New York, which is very interesting. But again, pretty day. I was trying to treat every show like it could be your last, like the way that you're not guaranteed any day of your life. And, so I was really trying to be, grateful and see past the hard stuff of tour pretty often. But by the end of it, I sure was ready to come home. Yeah, that's a fact.
Well, it sounds fun. The people were loving it online. People love
how was the online? I don't check anymore. It was good.
The online was good. People liked it. A little confusion with the mic swap thing, but I think outside of that,
clean mic, baby.
Yeah, clean mic.
Clean mic. He's spitting them and stuff. This mic's been in my basement getting used by my kids for band practice. For a month,
the kids have a band now.
They don't. Well. My son comes up with great band names because he's a big Iron Maiden fan.
Yeah.
So I think one the other day he's like, yeah, I want to be in a band called Firewolf.
It's awesome.
Shit. Good name. Like, I'm pissed I didn't think of that, No, but they jammed out in the basement. I can't imagine that they're being very respectful with not spitting into this mic. So I might have strep throat or something at the end of this.
Oh, man. Well, Benny, what segment does not have strep throat, but does need to be dusted off a little bit right now?
This day in music history?
Oh, we missed it. What do you got?
All right. On this day in 2002, the wedding ring that Paul McCartney had given his fiancée, Heather Mills, ends up thrown out of the window of the hotel where the couple is staying in Miami. Hotel staff uses metal detectors to find the $25,000 ring the next day. Despite the quarrel, Paul and Heather go ahead with the wedding. Two things jumped out at me when I read this story.
Shoot.
Hey, it's like, how there's like those basic rules in life, like in Teen Wolf, where he's like, never play cards with a guy named Brooklyn, stuff like that. I feel like if a wedding ring is being thrown out of a hotel window the night before a wedding, that might be a red flag.
Yeah,
that might be like, don't get married.
Maybe.
That popped out into my head. The second thing, and I don't mean to sound elitist here, but $25,000 ring for Paul McCartney?
Had that same note.
Seems low. That seems low. That seems modest.
Seems like I'm not really invested in this, right?
Yeah, like I didn't spend that much on a ring, but I spent a portion of that much on a ring. And the idea that Paul's not just going all in, I wonder if the two are hand in hand and if the price of the ring is part of the reason it went out the window. You know, like if you had an extra nugget $100,000 diamond on there, I don't know if that thing's going out the window at all. You think Paul? I mean, what's Paul got to be worth? Hundreds of millions of dollars, right? 25 grand on a wedding ring. I don't know, Paul. You should have gone farther in.
So I had the same one, did the quick switcheroo, and I wanted to bring this up because now I know that the girlfriend does not listen to this, does not watch this, so thank God. So I feel like
they are also not married anymore. So
okay, well,
and they weren't married shortly after this wedding. Like this happened in like 2003, and their divorce was finalized by 2008.
Okay.
So again, wedding ring goes out the hotel window. Don't waste the years. You know it's not going to work.
Now, I've recently have been learning a lot about this.
Yes.
So I've been going through that process. Let me ask you this question:
Go on.
When you're doing this thing, was your wife bigger into the I want the whole thing to be a surprise, or did you guys go and do this shopping together?
No, I wouldn't be. I would in my situation, I would be nuts to surprise my wife because she has very specific taste and very individualistic person. So like, and I don't know dick about rings.
Yeah.
So between all those things, I did surprise with like how and when I asked the question and stuff like that. But I made sure that she was part of the ring process because I wanted to nail it. I wanted to buy the thing once, you know?
100%.
And I don't know if you know this about me. I'm on my third
ring.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Because I remember one of the early tune-ups, like you were trying to find like the ring, and it was like a whole thing.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. And the first one got peed on and flushed down the bus of the toilet of the bus. So you know, maybe I'm the wrong guy to ask, Denny.
But I'm surprised how uncut gemsy this whole process is.
Oh yeah. Oh,
double doors.
You're hanging out in the Diamond District?
Maplewood, baby.
Maplewood. Oh, there you go. Uh-oh. I'll put in a call for you.
I know, right?
To the people.
All right. Well, on this day, Benny, in 1979, Donna Summer started a 3-week run at #1 with Hot Stuff. Her second U.S. #1. And I bring this up because a great documentary on her on HBO. It feels like everybody's getting the documentary treatment right now, specifically from HBO. As you know, people don't want to pay writers and stuff. They just want this straight content that's ready to go. But great Donna Summer documentary. Not the biggest Donna Summer fan. I know that probably would surprise some of our tune-up audience, but solid doc.
Wow. Is that why I've been seeing so many documentaries? I mean, someone's still got to write those.
You're going to see a lot more.
Yikes. Well, we'll get into that, won't we?
We will. All right. But we would be remiss without mentioning the passing of the queen of rock and roll, Tina Turner herself. You know, this happened last week. She died at her home near Zurich at the age of 83. Just a unbelievable career. Somebody who has, came up through the Ike and Tina. What were they called? No, I wanted to say Traveling Roadshow. It's not Traveling Roadshow. That'd be disrespectful. But they came up through the 60s and the 50s. Ike and Tina Turner, big thing. And then, but the part that I have most known Tina for is her 1980s turn. You know, after they have the messy split and everything, she comes back with Private Dancer and has songs like Better Be Good to Me, Typical Male, The Best, We Don't Need Another Hero, just great stuff. She probably has the best Bond song ever with Goldeneye.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, forgot about that.
And low-key acting turn, Thunder
Max. Come on.
Thunder Road. What the heck is happening here? Tommy, Mad Max, Thunderdome. Great stuff. But despite all of those later hits, man, you got to Proud Mary is still an all-time bop. Her version will be playing forever. So how will you remember Miss Tina Turner?
I mean, it's interesting because for someone my age, I think, of course, I knew of Tina Turner in the 80s. But then the movie came out in, you know, the 90s with Angela Bassett. And all I can remember my mom talking about was her arms, you know, how jacked she was. And Tina Turner's legs and, you know, like her hair and just kind of the image. She's one of those like iconic people in music that just like was seemingly part of my childhood, you know, and coming up. But I think the most impressive, I mean, when you go back to the 50s and 60s and really see what Ike and Tina did for rock and roll, you know, despite everything that came out later in the story we know and how big of a piece of shit Ike wound up being, um, you know, their contributions, especially for non-white people playing that music at that time and the way they were delivering it, was crucial. Crucial stepping stone in like the entire history of rock and roll that's probably not talked about enough. You know, it's like, how much can we talk about the fucking Beatles without getting into these other sides of the building blocks of rock, where like people were really stealing from these artists and the most influential, you know, artists at the time. And then, you know, Ike and Tina split in 76, and you can consider her 80s career as one of the greatest comebacks in music history. Like, no one knew she was coming back. And she not only came back, she came back with Private Dancer, which is a multi-platinum record with What's Love Got to Do with It on it. I mean, completely iconic through another generation. You know, she sold 150 million records worldwide, 12 Grammys, like you said. Interesting actress, really. And then, you know, you see interviews with her later in life, and it really seemed like just a wise person who really understood their career and their life, and like literally relinquished her American citizenship in 2013, became Swiss. Not a bad move. Beautiful place. And you could kind of see it in the way she would talk and stuff. She was just she felt full, you know, when she would speak later in life. And it was nice to see, especially considering the trauma that she endured like early in life. So I think there's a lot of lessons and a lot of cool things to take from Tina Turner's career. Big loss.
The era of her that I'm most fascinated, so like, is the Vegas era where she's almost like a nostalgic act playing these like lounges in like Vegas. And then she's like, you know what? I'm going to be the female Mick Jagger. And then Mick Jagger ends up trying to copy her yet again.
Right. Yet again.
Crazy.
How many times can Mick Jagger steal from black music in one lifetime? He's going for dozens at this point.
If he was my age, I'd be like, shame on you. But ignorance is bliss or ignorance is rich. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That motherfucker should be canceled like R. Kelly when you hear the fucking stories. Yikes.
But we will miss Tina Turner. Speaking of somebody else who has mid-career changed their entire trajectory of their career, Benny, we got to talk about what happened a little closer to home with Miss Taylor Swift, because I knew Taylor was big. You know, you know how much of a rabid fan base she had. I was not expecting the MetLife shows to be shut down. Secaucus Junction train station, Parkway shut down, almost like it's Labor Day, Memorial Day. People all trying to get into MetLife Stadium. She sold out 3 straight nights at the home of the New York Jets and the New York Giants, bringing a vibe out in 18 to 35-year-old women that it's like Grateful Dead, but if a giant glitter bomb exploded in the middle of it, just a ball of energy. Like some of the videos, I've never heard that stadium that loud, and they've had 100 concerts. They've had all of these sporting events, and it's never kind of matched that kind of energy in its existence thus far.
No, it's remarkable. I mean, you know, I knew Taylor Swift was big. I knew she was successful and iconic. I've always been pro Swift in most ways, you know. I like this stuff, but I had no idea that it was this big. I mean, just to give people a scale of this stuff, like try to remember 3 sold out nights at MetLife. That's like 200,000 tickets. It's a lot of fucking people, and that's one city. She was doing 3 nights. She did 3 nights at the Link in Philly. So literally 50 miles down the road, sold another 200,000 tickets, you know? And the one thing, so I actually have a funny anecdotal experience with this time. I flew home in the middle of this tour to go to my daughter's birthday party. And I flew from North Carolina to Philly and then Philly out to Nashville. And in both instances, because I was sort of following Taylor around, I could see the tangible effects of Taylor's concerts on the plane. There was some beat up looking people wearing Taylor Swift shit, all sweatpants, of course, on these flights. But when I was taking off from Philly to go back, her stage plot was still set up at the Link. So I actually got a bird's eye view from the plane and saw her stage setup. Oh my God, it's massive. And that's one of the things I was explaining to someone the other day. Like, just try to conceptualize like we're like a mildly successful rock band, right? And we have to bring a truck now for lighting packages, audio package, for merchandise, like stuff like that. I see a stage like that and I'm like, shit, that thing must have taken 60, 80 trucks to just move this gigantic, performance arena. Because basically when you go to these stadiums, they don't give you shit. They give you an empty stadium and they're like, here you go. And it's up to you to basically do everything. The staging, the lighting, the sound, all of it is coming from them. So, I mean, the amount of work and years and effort that it took from literally like probably thousands of people to put this show together is remarkable. It's like literally like a traveling city, and even you think, if you have 80 trucks going to a show, you have 80 truck drivers.
Yeah.
Which means 80 hotel rooms every day, like that's just drivers, So the size and scale of this thing is really like impressive and cool. And I'm glad someone like Taylor Swift is doing it. My nieces went to one of the shows the other day. They had a fucking blast. They got jazzed up. They got the t-shirts. I don't know. It's like one of those cool, I remember a lot of people from my generation, their first concert was New Kids on the Block. Because it was like the late 80s. It was their first chance to go. And the first thing that kind of crossed over with kids and you could get your parents to take you to the show. I have a feeling this is going to be a lot of people's first concert, and it's cool. I think it's going to a good person this time.
100%. And coming all, there was some speculation there, and I think we even talked about it on here. Is the stadium concert dead? And it turns out no, like there just wasn't somebody to meet the venues that you had across this country.
And another band doing it right now is like the Coldplay setup is amazing. That fucking stage setup Metallica has. You seen those videos with divorced Hetfield smoking cigars on the side of the stage? Like, it's it's I think we're dealing with a really like comeback summer in a lot of ways for large scale music like this,
100%. And I did, we were texting about this a little bit. You guys are a band that has great emotional appeal to people. This Taylor Swift, same thing on a almost cult like basis where people just are just rabid for her. Super interested on how. I mean, artists, I don't think try to do it. I just think it's like a byproduct of what happens. But just kind of in your experience, some of like the acts that you've seen and everything like that, what's like the common denominator for the bands that get this reaction out of their fans?
I think she never fucked it up. She never gave anything to her fans to apologize for, and like that's kind of a rare thing that people overlook, like. She had hits and she had hits when she was young and she had so many opportunities to kind of blow it, say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, put out a shit record. She never did it, and if you have like worldwide hits and you keep following them up with worldwide hits and you never mess up your reputation, you don't lose your fans, and you just keep the fans you had. And I think that's one of the reasons you're seeing like a lot of people in their 30s and 40s who enjoyed some Taylor Swift songs 10 to 15 years ago that are happily taking their kids to these shows and it's becoming a multi-generational thing. So, but I think with her, the cult-like status, there is more to Taylor Swift than songs, and there always have been. She's had a lot of situations where people tried to take advantage of her, and she stood up for herself, and has had press and positive press in other areas too, besides her music, which I think just added to this kind of massive narrative, But people will go the next 10, 20 years, people at labels and A&R people trying to find the secret balance that Taylor Swift found. You know what? She's just really fucking good, and she hit it at the right time, and this is what happens. Good for her,
100%. And hopefully her next move, which it seems to be, is going to save Hollywood. So get her fans back to the movie
going
theaters
Elvis.
too.
She's going Elvis.
No, as the director, which is what Elvis probably should have done with the creative vision.
Right. Yeah, right.
Different time. But
that's it.
Benny, let's get to said television and movies. And since we've been gone, it's been brewing pretty much as soon as we left. The WGA, the Writers Guild of America, went on strike on May 2nd. This alliance has about 11,000 writers writers of television, news, radio, movies, and online. They went on strike against the studios and that guild there. Demanding higher pay and a stable pay structure, as well as fairer deals and contracts and provisions about artificial intelligence. Just like how we talk about the NBA having CBAs and what that means for the players versus the team. Each guild and union in Hollywood has a similar situation. The last time that the writer's strike happened was in 2008. So I was pre-streaming, and the studios kind of won there because they kicked the residual check conversation about streaming down the road to now. And now we've seen what streaming has become. Like back then, it was like everything was free and it was wild. Now people are making a lot of money. So, and this upcoming week, the Directors Guild is also about their CBA is about to expire and they're about to go on strike. So, major work stoppage coming in Hollywood.
I mean, without knowing too much about this, I remember the last time there was a strike and how so much TV that people love suffered. The last season of a lot of stuff got fucked up and had horrible stories. They are good. The people who do this are good, and they know they're good. So when I see something like this, I like to see it, and I hope they're compensated it. I think it's a unique situation where the creatives actually hold some sway. They can be protected because they know how to get together, do it all at once, and be kind of unified, which, I think if any industry, got together, they might be able to figure out. I was wondering if I could do a drummer strike next, fair compensation for drummers. No. Songs sound different based on who's playing back there, people, but I think it's a positive thing. I support them, and I hope they get a fair wage. God knows the people who are signing the checks have more than enough money to properly compensate and take care of the people actually creating the work,
And the interesting thing, so the current residual structure, it's in the 3 to 4% range. All they want is in the 5 to 6% range from these billion-dollar companies and these CEOs who don't make the thing. They may greenlight the thing, but they don't actually make the thing. Your Bob Igers, your David Zaslavs of Warner Brothers and Discovery that have these NBA-esque contracts per year, $23-30 million a year. Then you have writers that are writing on very successful shows that are bringing in the money that are seeing $20,000, $30,000 a year. It's just disrespectful.
And I think it's even less about the upfront money and guarantees, because so many of these writers are working on major shows, extremely influential in what they're writing and what they're producing, but it's essentially freelance work. And they're only paid, by the episode, by the season. And it's the second somebody decides to pull the plug or do this, you're fucked and you're out of money, and I think that's part of the, the reason you need to compensate people well at the time. It's if somebody is producing something at such a high level, they deserve some flexibility in their life because of it, and not like having to, really grasp at straws like every single time you lose a job.
And take the stock price out of creativity. But that's all. Don't want to go. Don't want to go too far down the money route here. But Benny, as we say this, in the last week, 4 of the shows that came to define
Finales.
peak television of the last decade went off the air. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel took its final bow. Succession came to its epic conclusion, and as did Barry as well. And maybe we even lost Ted Lasso, but they're being kind of smart, leaving it up to any potential spinoffs in the future. This Ted Lasso one created a lot of intrigue. So not definitively done yet, but a lot of signs pointing to that at the end of this. So what do you make of the end or potential end of peak TV?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, like, it goes in waves, right? It goes in the same way of music, where some shows just hit at the right time and really draw people in. To be fair on what we're talking about, I've watched all of Barry, I've watched all of Ted Lasso. I really enjoyed both shows. Season 2 of Ted Lasso was okay.
Yeah.
But every one of these shows has a lull season. It's hard not to. Succession, I only peppered on, but I do know something about the ending of the show. I listened to Bill Simmons, so I couldn't get rid of it. And so did you watch the end of Ted Lasso? Am I allowed to talk about it?
I did. Yeah.
Now what are we dealing with here? Because I noticed like a lot of this season was character development to the players on the team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which would make an actual series about the team itself, coached by Roy Kent and Nathan Shelley, everybody's still in place besides for Ted, right? Yeah. So I do think there's a lot of freedom to do something on that way. What did you think of the last Ted Lasso?
Oh, very good episode. I like how they wrapped it. Interesting thing to point out there is Brett Goldstein, who plays Roy Kent, and Bill Lawrence, the showrunner, have overall deals with Apple still, so they could take that thing and run a completely different way. Brett Goldstein and Lawrence created Shrinking with Harrison Ford on Apple.
Yeah.
Another great show there.
Good show.
So there's that route that they could go. The way that I've wanted them to take any sort of spinoff here is put either Ted Lasso or Roy Kent, because you got a glimpse of Richmond starting a women's team.
Right.
Put Roy Kent, women's environment, very fun. Or take Ted Lasso, coach Kansas City Current in like the NWSL or something kind of like, so you get that fish out of water thing once again. I think that's where the magic really was.
Yeah. It's hard to see like that being the end because there were so many ways for it to go. Yeah. I got to say though, I had a good healthy cry at the end of that Ted Lasso episode when he comes home and his son sees him. Oh, it really meant a lot. I was a little concerned in that one scene where I'm like, oh no, they slept together.
Yeah,
they jumped the shark. You can't do it.
You can't do it.
It's the Tony and Angela thing. You can't do it. But I thought Ted Lasso, like this last season, really recaptured kind of the spirit of the first season, which Ted Lasso to me is like pop music, and pop music really toes the line all the time on being sweet and perfect and super fucking cheesy. Yeah. And I thought the first season towed the line perfectly. Second season was a little too much. And I thought this third season really brought it back to where I want it, which is like, I'm enjoying myself when I'm watching it. I got the good payoff at the end. That's what I want from fun-loving comedy. Yeah. You know what I mean? I don't need someone to die. I don't need a lesson. I want that. And they gave it to me. I was very pleased with the last one.
My criticism is of the criticism per usual. What I've grown to dislike about this show is the the sports writers that think that because they write words for their local newspaper or on Twitter, think that they're qualified to give their
Oh.
opinion. Like places like Awful Announcing, like places that like judge commentary to talk about how the show's lost its fastball. It's like, dude, you have no idea. Like not to say shut up and dribble, but shut up and keep microblogging.
Shut up and dribble. Oh no, not again. Yeah, no, I know. It's a crossover show, so people who are dipping their toes into that world get to say just because they play soccer on it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I hear that. Well, good for me. I don't look at any of that shit.
Yeah.
So I just enjoyed it myself, had a nice healthy cry. And yeah, no, I think there's a lot of avenues for it to keep going. End of Barry was great.
Yeah. I like
Um,
how they wrapped it up. Yeah.
yeah, me too. It was a good bow. But yeah, we'll see. What's the next?
Okay, so we got a couple. Our guy Tim Baltz's Righteous Gemstones comes back.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's a HBO show. This weekend on Lily Rose Depp show Icon, that's been very controversial. I think we talked about it on here. That's coming to HBO coming up. Amazon
Euphoria is still around,
yeah.
right?
Amazon thinks they may have a hit on their hands with this Citadel show. I think that's from the Russo brothers.
Okay.
But that's kind of, I feel like that's like the elevated version of what we've been seeing in primetime on these networks for decades now. But
I just want another season of Severance.
oh yeah,
That's what I want. I got hooked into that show and I need more.
I that was one of the productions that got shut down by the strike. So
Yeah.
it's coming, but maybe a little later than you'd like.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But final wrap on Ted Lasso is the fact that the thing that I absolutely love about what some of these shows, and I think Maisel, same thing. That's grown into be one of my favorites. It's so much harder to write optimism than it is to write darkness. Like I know people like love the writing of Succession, and it's brilliant, good show. But I think it's easier to cave to our like primitive, like evil nature rather than to try to find the optimism and like look up. So,
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think the smart thing that they did was like you watch a lot of character arcs.
Yeah.
In that show where a lot of the characters at times were borderline or totally over the top unlikable. And by the end, there were times in the show where you didn't like Jamie Tart.
Yeah.
That you didn't like Rebecca Welton.
Mhm.
That you didn't like Ted even, Nathan, like his whole, turn to heel and his reclamation project coming back. Like, I think that's where a show like this, you really got to tug into like the sensibilities of people and what you feel, and like watching people fuck up and make amends for it in good ways is a gratifying thing to watch. And I think that's Ted Lasso nailed that. It showed weakness in people, but it always brought them back. And I think what that show set out to do was to be hopeful. And by the end of it, it was filled with all sorts of hope, even though corny at times, like, oh, sure, you run into the guy at the airport. Okay. Like, this is where you got to let it slide a little with Ted Lasso. You got to let a little of that pop sugar on there to be able to accept it freely,
Well, do you want to talk about another show that's giving people hope? The NBA playoffs.
Denver Nuggets?
Yeah, the Denver Nuggets.
The best show in town?
All right. So when we last talked to you guys, we were fresh off of a first round that saw Miami beat the Milwaukee Bucks. And since then, Miami has taken care of the New York Knicks. They made Joe Mazzulla look like he's never coached in the NBA before, because shocker, he's a rookie coach. The Eric Spoelstra legacy has been further cemented as he has this team all the way to the NBA Finals. Pat Riley has now been in an epic 25% of the NBA's NBA Finals in his career, between as a player, a coach, and now an executive. Just the unbelievable feat there. And then you have old consistency on the other side. You have the Denver Nuggets, number one seed in the Western Conference, who took care of Phoenix and Devin Booker and Kevin Durant quite soundly. And then you had that Lakers series that was kind of a wash. And in between there, a thing that's not even worth talking about in the grand narrative of the playoffs is this Lakers Warriors series that was fun for old time's sake. But just like a TV show that's run too long, it's like, I've seen this before.
It's in the past.
So now we have something completely fresh and new in the NBA Finals. Nuggets, Heat. Game 1 last night, the Nuggets outclassed the Heat. Jokic, 27 points, 10 rebounds, 14 assists. Just a casual triple-double in his first ever NBA Finals game. Jamal Murray, 26 points, 6 rebounds, 10 assists. Bam, while not being able to get the better of Jokic, had an impressive 26-13. Nuggets 1-0 series lead. This score, the final score was closer than the game entailed. Miami just not being able to shoot. The guys that they've relied on to get here, not getting it done. So are we in for a short series here, or what do you think Spo has cooked up to try to slow down this high-power offense in Game 2?
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, my instinct going into this series was the Nuggets are a much better team than the Miami Heat.
Yeah.
And the way, I think we even said it before I left for the tour. We were talking about what happened with the Suns collapse and somebody getting hurt there. And I think I said it at the time. I'm like, who this helps the most is the Nuggets.
Yeah.
Because they're the team who actually has the cohesion, the chemistry, the plan, the team that doesn't get frazzled in big spots late in the shot clock, like they're fluid, and nobody in the West is fluid right now. No, everybody's trying to find it, trying to get to that next gear, and this team is just there. So, it seemed like the realistic thing from the get. But that being said, I went into the Heat Bucks series going, oh, Heat are going to get smoked. I went into the Knicks Heat series going, I believe the Knicks are going to win. I went into Boston Heat going, Heat are going to get smoked. And I got shocked every single time by a unit of people that I didn't expect to be able to play the way they were playing. So even though I thought Denver was going to do what they did last night, I thought, I was like, shit, the Heat have a lot of tricks up their sleeve and a lot of teams have a hard time with them. So we'll see. But they have taken Game 1 of every one of these playoff series so far. They did not take Game 1 here. I don't think they played badly. Butler could have done a lot more, but I think they did a good job with them defensively. And that's where one of the things that wasn't talked about a lot going into this series that became immediately noticeable was the positional size advantage that the Nuggets have. Yeah. And Jimmy Butler trying to back down Michael Porter or trying to back down Aaron Gordon is a lot more difficult than your typical threes on most teams. Even though Bam had a good game, it took a lot of shots to get there, and it's not exactly what their normal game plan is. It's kind of become 3-point success or bust for the Heat in a lot of ways. And a lot of the people they relied on all year to get them those supplemental buckets, your Struces and Martin from the series before, Duncan Robinson, they were just ice cold last night. And, by the end of the game, if 2 of those, Strus wide open 3-pointers went in, we actually have a pretty close game. But the one thing that became so noticeable again was like, you notice how Jokic and Murray specifically, there can be 3 seconds left on the shot clock and they're playing exactly the same way they would at the top of the shot clock. There's like, this team seemingly is ice cold and kind of unshaken by these situations and really know what they want to do, know how to play with each other. And like I said, it's so fluid. So I do think it's going to be a short series, actually, particularly after this. I don't think Tyler Hero coming back is actually going to help much, could potentially do the opposite. I think you're going to be seeing a lot more of our boy Highsmith, not Hightower, not Hightower, not Mean Joe Green. But yeah, I do. After watching last night, and seeing the way they just commanded the game, uh, seeing how stoked that home crowd is, like this is feeling very Nuggets. And I know that's easy to say after a 1-0, but I think I would have told you that if we did this podcast yesterday morning too.
I don't think that it's a coincidence that, you look at Jokic and you look at Jimmy Butler, two guys that are probably as Jimmy's not exactly stoic, but when it comes to what he does on the court, he knows methodically exactly what he wants, and he doesn't get flustered when it happens. Jokic, same thing, ice cold, knows exactly where his spot is, where his teammate's going to be. The unspoken communication between him and Jamal Murray goes back to them coming off the bench together once upon a time in that second unit. So I think that's no coincidence that these two teams are here. Like the coolest teams mentally are here. But when it comes, Miami has no answers here. I know that they have the best coach in the NBA, Highsmith, respectively. Like I heard people saying that, oh yeah, like he may start game 2. It's not going to shut down a MVP.
No,
if Embiid and Giannis have trouble on the Joker, a guy out of Wheeling Jesuit is gonna come on.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
I mean, the thing is too, like if I told you yesterday Nuggets are going to score 104 points, who do you think is going to win?
Nuggets.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I wouldn't have really? That's where, yeah. I mean, I thought if the Heat could actually manage themselves defensively and only give up 104 points, they're keeping themselves in the game. But this is what the Nuggets have been showing us all playoffs, is that they're very comfortable in close games.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think the Lakers played a very bad series against them. They were pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And they did their job and they kept it close. But the Nuggets just, at this point, they figured something out where they just know how to win. They know how to make the play when they need to make the play. They seemingly make every big shot they need to. I think Michael Porter is a funny wild card. I said it even before the playoffs started, and I say it now. Sometimes he can fucking shoot you out of a game. I love his confidence, but he takes bad shots sometimes, and I wish he would take that body and get himself into the paint every once in a while, and I think it would help a lot. But you need those bombers to stretch the floor, especially on that team. But all that being said, I think it's going to be Nuggets all the way. Not to say that they're going to sweep, but hard to see in a 7-game series the Heat finding enough to get past this team. It would have to take some really, really, really inspired performances from not only the Heat's big two, but a bunch of complementary players that you wouldn't expect to have huge series. I mean, Gabe Vincent's a great shooter, but then again, what I was talking about with this positional versatility, Jamal Murray's got 3-4 inches on the guy. I saw Jamal Murray boxing on ESPN the other day. He's a tough dude. So I just don't think they have enough.
And if you look at that Celtics series, right, the Celtics mentals beat them. The Nuggets are not going to beat themselves, because in some of that series, like the Celtics would like get up 10 and be like, oh, we're good. We can just take the rest of the game off. And Mike Malone, specifically, New York guy, is not going to do that. No. Joker's not going to do it. Murray's not going to do that. And also, how about Bruce Brown? Your boy.
Oh my God. Could I love Bruce Brown anymore? Could I? Oh, he's like Ben Wallace in a guard's body. I love the guy so much. Speaking of this Boston series, give me a percentage on what is the odds of Boston starting the season next year with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Joe Mazzulla all in tow.
Let's start with the Jaylen Brown conversation of it all first. That's a interesting one. So like the going rate for somebody like him would be around what you're going to have to pay him. And I don't think you're going
Bradley Beal numbers.
Yeah. But I don't think that you're exactly going to, they're not going to make that trade. They're going through their own reclamation stuff right now. And I don't know if Brown stock is that high to be a trade asset. I think the last 2 postseasons
Oh
have
yeah.
kind of poo-pooed that right there. So he's going to get his money, but what you would get in return for him right now, I think, is diminished goods.
Wow, you really think so?
Like, I like him a lot, but I don't think like a GM, given what we saw last offseason with like the Rudy Gobert trade and stuff like that, which you see A-Rod now trying to be a snake oil salesman for Rudy Gobert. I don't think you're going to see teams try to make that same mistake.
No. How about Boston goes out and finds themselves a real point guard?
Ooh.
Wouldn't that help? Because the one thing I see with Jaylen Brown, he forces a lot, right?
Yeah.
He's not a great creator in the sense that for some reason he's not a great dribbler. It seems like that might be like the worst side of his game. And there was a couple times in that game 7 where Jaylen Brown clearly had nothing, had no space, and it's just tossing up a 29-footer or something because I think he thinks he has to.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been the spirit of this Celtics offense for years now, has been, we got these 2 guys. They create our offense. This runs through them. Marcus Smart sits in the corner and takes his threes along with Horford and stuff. But I think at this point, like what you said, like does Boston go ahead and trade Jaylen Brown to the Blazers for the number 3 pick or something like that? Or, I think these are like the realistic options that are actually out there. But does that put Boston over the top? And you have the Jason Tatum window now. Like this is the guy you're building this all around. I think everybody forgets that Jason Tatum was well in the MVP conversation for the first few months of this season. He's an excellent player, and he's only 25. So I do think the key for the Celtics at this point is you got to pay the going rate for a guy like Jaylen Brown. I know he's going to make $50 million a year, and it's going to be a hard check to write. But I think your best chances to win in this window are to keep those 2 together and try to make some supplementary deals to figure things out. I mean, Rob Williams, as much as he can be impressive, I don't think you can count on that guy for full minutes or full loads anymore. He's going to be a part-time player, at least for the time being. Horford is starting to slip down. Marcus Smart has always been polarizing in the way he plays. And, why don't you try to get a proper point guard in there this offseason and see what happens? I think that might be and obviously some size up front, but I think that's the best route for Boston at this point.
I keep trying to think as you're talking here, like where they would go. You look at teams like Minnesota could be a option, though. I think they're married to Anthony Edwards and they're not trying to let that go. Maybe Detroit, brand new.
What about Houston? I think Houston, Atlanta. I think those are the teams. I think like a Portland, the Houston, who have that draft asset, because those are teams who are looking to win now.
Yeah.
And obviously, putting Jaylen Brown with Damian Lillard, would get that team excited and maybe whet the palate for Lillard, on what he wants over there. I could see like in Atlanta, like, oh, let's get Trae Young in Boston instead and see what happens and swap those guys. Those seem like the trades that are out there. Houston's looking to rebuild fast and be good soon. But that's when this draft drops off a little bit. Like, even though we know that, the Thompson twins are seemingly going to be useful NBA players. I mean, there's no telling when or if that's definitely going to be a thing, and Boston cannot afford to waste 2-3 years of a Jason Tatum window here. You just don't know what's going to happen. And you really got to get into this guy's late 20s and give him the best opportunity he can, all the time. But like you said, it's one of the strangest flip-floppy teams I've ever seen as far as like what they are one night to what they are the next night. But I don't know if taking this pair apart is the answer to that. I don't think so.
And are we sure that Tatum is the guy, best player on a championship team, top 5 guy in the league kind of caliber here? Like, are we sure?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, to think like, if we were looking like historically for the amount of playoff and regular season success a guy has had under 25 years old, Jason
That's true.
Tatum, it's pretty remarkable. And I feel like there's a highlight on him because he's been in so many big spots already.
Yeah.
When most guys under 25 aren't even scratching the playoffs yet, and we don't give them any shit. We're like, oh, they're still coming into their own, building the team. I mean, the guy was in the finals last year. He was in the Eastern Conference Finals this year.
Saved their season multiple times.
Saved their season multiple times. Like I said, MVP front runner at the beginning of this season, before other guys start stepping in. So no, I think Jason Tatum is still the real deal. And if there's less than 10 people you're going to build a team around in this league, Jason Tatum is clearly one of them.
Yeah. Well, let's do coaches real quick before we get out of here.
Yeah.
A turbulent offseason, almost a English Premier League style offseason with the coaching. Like, you don't win a championship, you're out of here. Mike Budenholzer, Milwaukee, you're out of here. Monty Williams in Phoenix, new ownership, you're out of here. Nick Nurse, Toronto, pack your bags. Dwayne Casey, Pistons, less success, but get out of here. So yeah, just the Philadelphia 76ers, Doc Rivers, you couldn't repeat your Celtics championship glory. We're going to do the same thing Steve Ballmer did. Get out of here. So some of these have already named their new face in a new place. Monty Williams, Detroit. Monty Williams, according to Brian Windhurst, did not want this job. But they backed up the Brinks truck in a deal that he gets almost $10 million a year, which is unheard of for a coach that hasn't won a championship to get that kind of deal. So Monty Williams, Detroit, love that. Love to see what he could do with Cade and Jaden Ivey there. This was the case before we went on a little break. Ime in Houston, like that there. The Milwaukee Bucks allegedly set to hire Adrian Griffin. I'm just going to keep moving on that one there because I think that is a complete waste of time. That's a complete waste of a elite player in Giannis' championship window. Philadelphia 76ers, Doc Rivers out, Nick Nurse in. Like that. Could be interesting. You've seen what Nick Nurse has been able to do with some big men. This year, I think, was kind of a fluke compared to the rest of his time in Toronto. So Nick Nurse in Philadelphia. And still TBD on what the Phoenix Suns and Toronto Raptors are going to do. So what do you make of this coaching musical chairs happening in the NBA right now?
Well, I didn't know Monty Williams didn't want the job publicly, but when I just see fits and what I expect the guy to do and what he's seemingly good at already, hoping he gets to the next level, I mean, they're trying to rehash what the Suns did. Which is bringing a coach to a very young team and, mold them to the point of an automatic playoff team. And I think they're thinking, we got Cunningham coming back, hopefully, nice and healthy. Ivy had a great rookie year. Duren had a great rookie year. You still got Bogdanovich there, able to score a lot, a decent amount of depth and a number 5 pick coming in as well. So I think that's a great fit. And for something Monty Williams is good at, he's going to give that team, cohesion and discipline. And, bare minimum, they're, 2-3 years away from proper finals contention anyway. So, whatever happened to Monty Williams with the Suns will be ancient history by then. And I think that's one of the more natural signings that made the most sense, albeit the price tag being a little nuts. The other one I really liked is Nick Nurse to the Sixers. I think he's had one of the strangest teams in basketball for a couple years now that was based on this concept that, was really hard to coach. He had to come up with like a lot of strange and interesting ways to make that team work. And I think he's going into a much better situation now where he's literally adopting the MVP of this season. Hopefully for him, he's not getting James Harden back. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I think Nick Nurse is clearly one of the best X's and O's coaches in basketball, and he's got respect in that way. And that's something I think Doc Rivers suffers with a little bit is that part of coaching. So as far as that goes, I think it's a great fit. Udoka in Houston is funny because, regardless, we'll never know what happened with Boston at this point. I mean, I don't know like what it was, how bad it was. Like I'll never know. But I know that Houston just has a tendency to shoot itself in the foot a lot of times. And I kind of see like, oh, let's bring in Ime, let's get Harden back, and Jalen Green is a really interesting young player, but certainly not a sure thing moving forward. That team to me is still going to be bad for a while, and I don't know what Ime is doing for that. Adrian Griffin to the Bucks. Listen, sometimes you got to take a chance, right? And Nick Nurse was an assistant on another team, came and brought him to the finals his first year in there. Like, it's a long shot, pal. I know it is. I know it's a long shot, but we don't know what this guy can do yet. We don't know. And maybe they know something that apparently the Bucks vetting process was very serious. They went to every city that the people were in and met them individually. They didn't make them travel. It was a deep process. You don't know the history of, what clicks with certain type of players in this. So I think reserve the room to be a little optimistic, because you don't know what he can do yet. Right. So maybe you're okay.
Here's
Did that help you? Did that help you at all?
Here's what I know. Adrian Griffin was part of the Milwaukee Bucks front office once upon a time with John Horst in 2008. When you have a window like this, you don't go with your boy. You go with the guy who has made NBA Finals adjustment. Otherwise, we're going to see Joe Mazzulla not knowing how to coach against Steve Kerr in a final.
Joe Mazzulla is a lot more green than Adrian Griffin.
I meant email last year, going up against. But
So who did you want instead?
I wanted Nick Nurse because I agree with you when it comes to X's and O's. See, this is the thing with John Horst. And, yes, he makes that great Drew Holiday trade. But in the move sense, you can call into question what he's been able to do. His draft record, not exactly great. He's hired great assistants for these guys, but I don't know how much of that was Bud bringing guys who go on to be head coaches. I mean, Taylor Jenkins in Memphis. You have Darvin in LA. So I don't know how much of that was Horst, how much of that was Bud, but this just is you have guys that have either been to the NBA Finals as coaches or have won, and you go with the guy who is your boy, who has, granted, he has a long track record. He's worked with Scott Brooks in OKC. He's worked, has a long track record. Glad he's getting a opportunity, but a opportunity on a team that has a dwindling championship window. It's kind of hard to look at the positive there.
There's a pretty high net rating for active coaches with kids in the league, though.
Oh.
So
yes. Who cares?
Good high net rating for that. So
what have you done for me since your kid's been born?
I think it's okay. I think they're going to be okay. I like it. I'm surprised. I'm shocked. Kenny Atkinson just can't get a job after he got fucked by the Nets.
Well, he did get a job.
His Quinn Snyder light hair,
He did get a job, but he was like, nah, I'm just going to stay on the bench and try to go all Mike Brown. Quinn Snyder, how upset do you think he is that he's like, oh, I got myself in Atlanta, a team where the point guard's not going to like me in 18 months, 12 months.
I think he's in okay shape actually over there. I think Atlanta is a much better team and deeper and have a lot of pieces that a good coach is going to be able to work with. And I thought you saw them actually come up with a couple things in their play-in tournament and their little run this year that kind of actually perked my ears up a little, where I'm like, you know what? I don't think this team's in as bad of a shape. I think Atlanta's a classic case of overplaying their value for 1 year, making people think they were ready for a finals already when they certainly weren't. But I don't think it's as grim as people make it out to be. They've got a lot of interesting pieces over there.
All right. Well, we will see. I hope I'm wrong. I've questioned John Horse a lot on this podcast,
Sure
and he
have.
won a championship. But it's
And I know as a regular listener of this podcast, John Horace has wrote in many times.
I know.
to
Barry
me.
Baum has me on speed dial. I love your Sunday show, but what are you doing on the podcast?
He's got my own email now because he's like, listen, I don't want to ruffle any more feathers with Denny, but I'd like to have a word with you about how you cover my team. So this is why I'm so sycophantic for Adrian Griffin right now. I'm trying to get myself a private jet ride to Milwaukee, you know?
And when you come to the Paps, just leave 2 tickets. It'll be under Giannis Antetokounmpo. And there you go.
I just met a kid named Giannis the other day. It's
Wait.
starting.
Giannis or Gianni? Because Italians in this area cannot
Giannis.
say Giannis, and it's my favorite thing.
Giannis. And I was tested by a parent who was like, do you know where I got that from? I'm like,
Oh,
I think I know where you
I
got
can
that
imagine.
from. Yeah.
All right. Do you want to get out of here, or do you want to talk a little Job Moran? Just
That's
drop
it
the
for
bomb.
this
All
year.
right, all right.
That's it for this one.
All right.
We'll save
Sounds
Job.
good.
We'll save Job for after Silver brings the hammer down.
Brings the hammer down. That's true.
Yeah.
All right. Plenty of ways to get in contact with the show. You can email us at the tuneuppodcast@gmail.com. 2 P's in there. You can follow us on all the social platforms at the TuneUp HQ. We are everywhere. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube at the TuneUp. If you want to follow the big man, he has been posting about his journey across the country at Benny Horowitz on Instagram. I'm at Deny Gallagher. Ben, you got anything else?
Yeah, stay classy, New Jersey.
The show has ended. Go in peace. You have been listening to and watching the Tune Up.